Muy buenos días, sean bienvenidos a un nuevo episodio del Otro Rincón Podcast. En el primer episodio del año estaremos hablando sobre lo que se viene en el universo no-FIFA. Ya hemos dedicado varios videos en el canal sobre el tema y ya sabemos que para el mes que viene tendremos la reunión general, el meeting que tienen progresivamente los miembros de ConIFA, esta vez será en Hungría, donde se llevarán a cabo los sorteos para los torneos más importantes de este organismo a celebrarse en 2024, como son la Copa Mundial Femenina, que se llevará a cabo en Bodo, en Noruega, y la Copa Mundial masculina, a celebrarse en Kurdistán. También UFA, la otra organización que alberga equipos no FIFA, también estará llevando a cabo varios torneos, varios partidos entre sus miembros, y será interesante ir hablando sobre el mismo, pues. Pero aparte de eso, también en el capítulo de hoy estaremos conversando con Danny Clarke, que fundó el equipo internacional de su rey, que formó parte de estas dos organizaciones, y también tiene un nuevo proyecto en puertas que también le agregará dinamismo a todo este complejo y sumamente interesante mundo no FIFA. Estaremos más adelante con él y será interesante ver el punto de vista y a qué viene todo esto, toda esta conversación sobre el tema. Ya en 2023 tuvimos las eliminatorias europeas para la Copa Mundial de Kurdistán, también estuvo la Copa Asiática. Fueron torneos que nos vieron a una parte, una muestra del nivel de los equipos para las distintas competencias de ConIFA, que ya hemos hablado todos estos días, todos estos meses sobre ello. Y por ello decidimos hacer este episodio sorpresivo, no teníamos pensado hacerlo, pero decidimos aventurarnos a ver qué podía salir. Surgió esta conversación con Danny a última hora. Y vaya, sí, estamos emocionados por eso, de darles algo nuevo y ver todo esto que venimos siguiendo, este universo desde hace, no sé, aproximadamente 5 años, 6 años. Estamos montados encima de la ola viendo cómo se va desarrollando los torneos, los equipos, las historias, y es lo que nos apasiona, es lo que hemos venido haciendo desde que surgió el juego de los olvidados, el libro, y todo lo que ha venido consecuentemente. Y bueno, esperemos que sigan habiendo interés en este mundo cada vez más, inclusive muy contentos con lo que fue el último torneo en Groenlandia, que tuvo bastante interés, generó bastante interés, inclusive el capítulo que dedicamos hace unos meses sobre ello le fue muy bien. De hecho, en los últimos días ha surgido una alternativa sumamente interesante. Hablamos de Unrepresented Sports, fundado por Danny Clarke, un británico entusiasta del fútbol y que hace unos años también estableció la selección internacional de su rey, un equipo representativo de un condado del sureste de Inglaterra. Danny, un gran placer tenerte aquí para conversar y empezar esto preguntándote qué te motivó a armar este proyecto. What motivated you put together this project?
When I decided to step down from international Surrey football at the start of this year, I realised quite quickly that I wanted to do something else. It wasn't an end to my involvement in non-FIFA football. So I spent a lot of the year thinking what to do next, talking to various people I met along the way. Obviously, kind of similarly had some interest in non-FIFA football but weren't involved in it anymore because they saw the challenges involved when working with certain organisations, that there are a lot of hurdles still to sort of get over before a lot of teams were able to reach their potential, and a lot of teams moved away from this previous structure. And because of that, it made me think of what alternatives there. If the federation model no longer worked, what was the alternative? What was the difference needed? I did a paper earlier this year where I thought, what are the challenges of non-FIFA football? What to make the confederation model work? What changes need to be done? And so I put out a paper earlier this year with some of my own ideas, And in doing so, I realised that the current model just doesn't work. The people involved in the different organisations and how willing teams are to be involved in the process wasn't actually sustainable. And so something different kind of needed to be looked at. So I thought quite hard about what the alternative is and got thinking quite heavily. And I thought that teams want to be involved in these tournaments, but they don't want to be involved in the geopolitics of it. A lot of people don't want to be involved. Sponsors don't want to be involved in geopolitics. The teams don't want to be involved in the day-to-day run of the confederation. It's a very volunteer-heavy outlet, puts a lot of people off. And so I was thinking, what difference can make? And so I started thinking about maybe it's time that a company does the job, take it around the aspect of a company just organising tournaments, inviting teams to participate, provide more reward for teams that can't commit to these. A lot of teams, especially those not based in Europe, have a hard time taking part of these, so spending hundreds of euros a year on membership fees for these organisations to potentially not be involved at all, it seemed kind of wasteful. And so I wanted to take a different approach to that, and started thinking more about the event organiser approach. And that's how kind of Unrepresented Sports came about, providing an opportunity and thinking, if the confederation model doesn't work, then why can't event organisers take it from there? And so I started coming up with the idea, and then through that came up with the idea of the Independent Association Cup as that sort of first tournament. It's not a World Cup. We have an opportunity to potentially work with them better by doing things in a slightly different way. There might be opportunities to fix that confederation model by doing things as an event organiser. Let them deal with the geopolitics if they want to do with it, and let us deal with the commercial side and the actual event organising, and not only create new opportunities for teams that can't take part in the World Cup or Continental Cups, but and say to them, this is your one-off, there is no obligation further on to this. I feel like teams that participate in the World Cup or Continental team, there's more expectation to participate in more tournaments, which isn't always practical, and that puts some teams off membership of these organisations. If you can sell it as a one-off event that they only have to be involved with on a one-off, and they've already got plans or arrangements that might put them in the area anyway, why couldn't you offer that they wouldn't necessarily been able to do before, and take things in a different approach? And so I spent a lot of this year thinking about that, and came to this idea, was quite heavily motivated in the desire to help these teams, but do so in a different approach, and hopefully give them more opportunities moving forward.
What are the biggest challenge when visualizing competence of the scheme?
The biggest challenges we face in terms of building Unrepresented Sports and the Independent Associations Cup is finding the right sort of people to build a successful business out of. And while historically non-FIFA football's been quite reliant on volunteers, we want to take this in a different approach. Volunteers are quite useful in terms of getting things done and keeping costs down, but they're in short supply, increasingly so. And you can't unfairly assume that people are going to work for free the entire time. And so we want to break that model, and we want to create opportunities for paid employment, create jobs in sports marketing, sports organisation. And to do that, we are looking to create the first jobs upon finding the right sort of sponsorship and sort of funding to be able to cover the wages of that. We want to create part-time wages and then build from there into creating longer term employment opportunities, and create a small team of talented and capable people who want to start their own careers in sports marketing and sports event management. And finding these sorts of people and being able to provide them with the wages they deserve is probably going to be the biggest challenge, especially in the short term, but even longer term for this company.
Football is sport is played all over the world. How do you see influence team from different culture and geopolitical approach against other?
Football's unique in the fact that it's probably one of the only sports in the world where you can find it everywhere. On every country, on every continent, on any island, you'll find at least a few people who know and play it, which is quite rare when you compare to other sports where it might only just be a regional or a certain sort of community sort of aspect to it. And then you find football, which is probably one of the most unifying sports in the world. You also have the issue regarding geopolitics and the fact that sport can be used as a way of denying opportunities to people, whether it's denying certain groups from being able to compete internationally, whether it's using sport to deny privilege based on economic backgrounds or other sort of things. And the impact that geopolitics has then on sports itself, in the fact that some countries and communities can't play each other because of violence associated between them, and that denies their opportunity. When you think think of tournaments between, say, UEFA associations and the fact that some teams can't play each other because of what's happened outside of football. And that can be quite a saddening aspect. But then in the same regards, football can then be a way to heal those divisions and heal those communities once again, which I think a lot of the world wants to see happen. And hopefully Unrepresented Sports will then provide a platform and a bridge in some senses to some of those communities that have been denied opportunities, or sport has been used to deny them opportunities around the world.
Danny, you have been involved in the no-FIFA universe for some time. What attracted you?
My journey into non-FIFA football began with discovering Sealand, a micronation off the Essex coast in the UK, and they launched their own international football team in 2012, playing a couple games, including against the Chagos Islands. By the time they finished playing in 2014 was around the time that ConIFA started, and I started following that aspect of non-FIFA football as well. Watched their bits of their international tournament in Östersund, Sweden, and then started working on my own international team in Surrey, being the region I'm from in the UK, and sort of working through there. By the time the 2018 World Cup came to the UK, played its first games, I managed to meet quite a lot of the people who was working at ConIFA at that time, and sort of built up a rapport with some of them, and sort of got talking to various people and teams, and sort of built quite a good relationship across non-FIFA football that I then gradually grew as well, with playing more games against teams like the Chagos Islands, Matabeleland, and then was quite fortunate in those contexts in helping me to assert Surrey into the World Unity Football Alliance, and sort of building that relationship up as well. And so came quite close to working with a lot of teams and wanting to obviously help them. It wasn't just about Surrey anymore, which I think contributed to the idea that I wanted to leave my team but still be involved in non-FIFA football. I wanted help with the teams themselves rather than just one individual project. And so when I left International Surrey Football and started working towards Unrepresented Sports, I had quite a heavy first-hand approach on supporting the other teams in non-FIFA football going forward.
What could be the biggest difference or attribute that separate this project from others that had appeared over the years?
Perhaps the biggest difference between Unrepresented Sports and, say, ConIFA is the fact that we're not a federation, so teams don't apply for membership to us. We organise events and tournaments, and then we can approach teams or teams can approach us, take part in that individual event, no commitment going forward. It's also quite notable that Unrepresented Sport isn't limited just to football. While we're just beginning with football, because that's where the pool of experience or sort of existing context is, we hope to be able to expand into other sports, provide opportunities in rugby, ice hockey, any other sort of sport that doesn't have the top tier attention that it does in its domestic country, whether that's in the UK or even internationally.
Thanks, Danny. Gracias, Danny, un placer. Con esto terminamos este episodio. Agradecido por la recepción a lo largo de todo este tiempo en el podcast. Y los invito a suscribirse y a estar atentos a lo que se viene. Muchísimas gracias.